the American dream is that you need to own the thing that you live in. And I'm no different. I'm a self-employed housekeeper. I do gardening, I do painting, I do chores. I've never made more than about $20,000 a year. And I like it that way. You know, I went to university, I graduated, I got my degree, I went out into the world, I worked in a skyscraper, put on a tie, and I was completely miserable. And I wasn't very good at the stuff I was trying to do. And I went back to housekeeping. And I like it better. You know, it's very relaxing, there's no stress. I like the people that I work for. I just realized that owning a home was going to be a real challenge. If you live in San Francisco and you clean houses and garden and paint for a living. The problem then is, how do you own a home if you're very happy doing what you do for very little money? And I live in San Francisco, and you cannot buy a house in San Francisco, even if you have a really good job, you know, which is what most people struggle with. So I decided to come up with a split strategy. I would continue to live in a very small, affordable apartment in San Francisco, and I would buy a house someplace else. Then you have all these conversations with bankers. You know, you get all your documents prepared, and this is my income, and here are my tax records, and this is my savings, and they look at you, and you know, their eyes glaze over, and you realize, like, they're going to give me a lollipop and send me home, which is pretty much what happened. So I eventually found a piece of land that I could afford to pay for with cash. So I wound up in Hawaii. This is back when oil was $9 a barrel, so you could actually get a flight for $99 one way. I found a perfectly nice piece of land, 1.5 blocks from the ocean, and it was rural Hawaii, nowhere near anything, but it was in a failed subdivision. It was a subdivision that was carved up in the 70s. They put in the roads, they plated all the lots, and nobody bought them, and nobody built anything on them. And it just sat there for 30 years. I just paid $3,000 cash for this lot. I did it with cash with no mortgage. And it took 10 years, and it's very small, but it's a very comfortable home. And over the next 10 years, I built a house. And first it was the foundation, then it was the shell, and then little by little, we fleshed it out. Mortgages make things fast. They speed up the process, it's instant gratification. Building a house slowly over a period of 10 years on a cash basis means that you have a much smaller house. It means you don't get everything you want right away. You have to think about what you really need. Like, what's really crucial? Because you can't have everything that you want. And so you think, well, okay, it's Hawaii, it's not cold. Do I need insulation and drywall right now? Or will the exterior cladding and the 2x4s be enough?
You didn't have all the money at the beginning.
I had none of them. I bought the land cash, and I had enough money squirreled away that I could get a shell up and running, and then, the septic system, and it was all just sort of phased in increments. When you're paying cash as you go, you sort of get the absolute basic shell up and running, and you've got your plastic utility sink instead of real kitchen, and you get your folding tables from a garage sale, and you work and you pay what you can. It took 10 years, and you have to live with. There was a period of a couple of years where I just couldn't do anything at the house. I was strapped. The cash was gone because I did have rent to pay here, and I had a really tiny place. So that church spire right there, the cottage was right next to it in the backyard. It was a 1930s potting shed behind an old Victorian in the Mission here. A friend once stepped in, and he sort of stood in the middle of it, and he stretched his arms out, and he said, "You can just about turn into Wonder Woman in here." That's exactly how big it was. But, it was cheap. So but there are times when you simply can't do anything. You just have to wait a couple of years. And I did. When you say you're going to build a small house, you get bad reactions from everybody. The county permit people don't want to sign off on a tiny house. Contractors don't want to build a small home because there's no profit. Banks don't want to process a mortgage for under a certain minimum amount of money. And also they tell you that nobody wants a small house. So if you default on your mortgage, they can't unload a small house, because who's going to want to live in a tiny house? So nobody in society thinks that a small house is even worth building. It's a problem. So I had to fool the county. I had plans drawn up for a proper 2-story family home. I said, now we're also going to build a detached 2-car garage in the front of the lot. And they approved that. And then I just built the 2-car garage, and I never built the house. And I got the inspectors to come, and they inspected the garage, and there was a septic system large enough to accommodate all of it, so there was no problem with health and safety. And I had the electrical panel put in the garage, and I had a toilet and a wash sink, a little powder room in the garage, which is legal, and a washer and dryer hookup and a utility sink. It's all legal. It's all inspected. Everybody was happy. And then when I was done with the garage, I just sort of sent them a note saying, this is all I'm doing. I'm done with the project. We're good. It's 480 square feet, so it's 20 feet wide and it's 24 feet deep, and it is exactly the size of a 2-car garage. I like a comfortable bed, and I like a big table where I can serve dinner to lots of people. I didn't need a big TV, I didn't need a couch, I didn't need all that kind of crap. When you're living in a one-room space, you have to sort of decide, do you want a Murphy bed, do you want to sleep on a pull-out sofa, how do you want to make those trade-offs? And I decided, no, I'm going to have a giant table, I'm going to have a big bed, comfortable, and everything else is just going to work itself out. It's basically a studio apartment. If you took a city studio apartment and you plopped it in a tropical island, that's what it is. When you decide to build a house without a mortgage, you start to realize that there's a way of getting things done that doesn't involve cash necessarily. Instead of just thinking automatically you're going to go to the Home Depot and you're going to buy what you need, you think, where can I get that thing some other way? Can I substitute something that's just in a scrapyard? The kitchen sink was $20 and the countertops were $15. And the furniture was stuff that I gathered up. Aside from the mattress and the box spring, all the furniture was secondhand, used. What you're doing is you're substituting time and labor for money. It's the opposite of the get everything you want quick with a loan. Also, because I couldn't get a standard contractor to build it, I had to find a lot of little people. A plumber and an electrician and a carpenter who were sort of in between jobs. It was an entirely different way of thinking about how to get things done. You stop asking about how do I please a bank, and you start thinking about what do I need and how can I help the people near me get what they need. Historically, most people never got mortgages because the banking system was really just for rich people to loan money to each other for very specific things. And if you wanted a home, you basically built it yourself. Amish style with the barn raising, or an extended family would get together and grandma and grandpa and mom and dad and the kids and the grandkids would all live in one big house because that's what you had to do in order to house yourself. Or most people just rent it. And nowadays, it's like a shortcut. You can go and you can get a loan and you can buy the big house with 5 bedrooms and 6 bathrooms and a 2-car garage and a bonus room and you can get it all at once up front quick. You get everything you want right away and then you just pay it off for 30 years. That's kind of a lie though, because nobody ever really pays off their house in 30 years. What happens is about 10 or 15 years into it, you refinance your home. And then, I could use this to buy a car. We do need a new kitchen and we could, the master bathroom could get a facelift. And you go through this whole thing. So as time goes on, your house gets bigger and it gets fancier, but your mortgage never really goes away. In fact, your mortgage keeps getting bigger. And there's a lot of financial incentives to do that. You can deduct all the interest on your mortgage and that kind of thing. Like if you own a small house and you never improve it and you pay off your mortgage the way you're supposed to, you're told that you're not doing things correctly. You're not taking advantage of the financial opportunities that are built into the mortgage system. But it means that people are like 65, they've lived in their home all their life, and they still have a huge mortgage. My version of the American dream, it's not about having stuff, although I do have nice things and I like them. What I like even more is time. Time not to have to work to pay for a lot of crap that you probably don't really need, that you bought because you think you're supposed to have it. Scale down to what's really necessary. And maybe you could have a little bit more time and not work so much and not be in such a panic about how you're going to pay that huge mortgage for a house you don't really need. Because I could never buy anything in the city, nothing. I wanted to own something, and the house in Hawaii was a great way for me to own a thing. I thought of it as a retirement home because I didn't think that I'd have a pension, and I needed to keep a roof over my head when I'm an old man. I also would be able to grow most of my own food because it's beautiful weather year-round. I planted the fruit trees, I built up the soil. And there's no water bill or sewer bill. I've got a septic system, and I also collect all of my water from the roof. If you don't have a mortgage and the taxes are low, how much really do you need to keep going?